That's good.
Transformation of virtually every country in the world. And in the United States, it's taken the form of an oligarchical counter-revolution against the reforms of the 1930s, with the Wall Street interest asserting itself as more and more dominant. And once bankers and oligarchs have power, the things that they do, you could call them a policy. You could call it something like a tropism. It's like the way a plant responds. Naturally, since they're oligarchs, they're going to try to downgrade the standard of living of the vast majority of the population. They're going to claim that the world is overpopulated, that industrialization, industrial pollution, and overpopulation are the main problems that face the world. And they're generally...
I mean, they kind of are.
...going to try to crush...
Maybe not so much overpopulation, just the way we distribute things, which people blame on overpopulation. It's mostly just resource distribution and land use. But
crush and mortify any kind of popular democracy or mass movements with any kind of progressive content.
Nations rise and fall. They knew how debt could never be recuperated.
Fuck you,
They
Alan
knew
Watt.
that disease or prolonged war could wipe out the population and the future populations that pay off debt. So these guys all work together. That's why it's no surprise that today you have Lord Rothschild coming out, pushing the latest scam or religion that we must all believe in, which is global warming, which his personal bank...
Oh no, not carbon credits, the thing that is like a neoliberal fix that most people are not in favor of.
His family's bank in Switzerland will be in charge of. They've run the system, the whole economic system of the world for the
God damn, I just hate this guy so much.
last...
Like, the way his voice makes him sound like he should be a smart person, but he's just a complete idiot. Such a shit. Take his accent and give it to some smart person. He needs to sound like some New Jersey, like, chud, like, yeah, man, you know, the global banking system, man, yeah, it's all fucked up, you know, you fucking, yeah, you know, they make the global warming and, yeah, you know, it's fucked up.
250 years. So why shouldn't they also run the economic system for the next few hundred years?
The question of a ruling class, oligarchy as a ruling class, is posed by Plato in the Republic, where we find...
Yeah, let's go philosophy 102. Actually, I wouldn't call this philosophy 101 shit. I would call it philosophy 102 shit. It's slightly a little bit higher level. You don't get into Plato's The Republic until you've taken a couple more community college classes.
That oligarchy is a constitution full of many evils, where the rich dominate the government by buying it, and the average individual or the poor count for absolutely nothing. Oligarchy is a frame of mind. In other words, if you're a banker, this is already a worldview. It's a world outlook, and it implies the policies that have got us here, right? Malthusian policies, zero growth policies, driving down the standard of living.
Yes, like those famously implemented zero growth policies.
Attempts to wipe out all kinds of mass institutions that might be a countervailing force.
This is a scientific dictatorship, which Bertrand Russell said, and the Huxleys said, both Aldous and Julian Huxley said they would bring in.
Ooh, he's smart. He said Aldous Huxley, the correct pronunciation of his name. He must be very smart.
The scientifically...
This guy must be so annoying to talk to. Like, this is, like, you know how, like people say, like, I like to have a beer with George W. Bush. This is a guy that I don't want to have a beer with. Like, he would just start talking your ear off about bullshit, and then each beer he would get more and more racist until he's screaming slurs and talking about, like, how women don't love him and shit. And then he would just start crying and, like, trying to fight people.
Controlled society. It's not just family planning, which really means abortion and so on. It's global planning, which is literally sterilization and abortion worldwide for the ideal reduced society, and not just across the board, through genetics, through the Genome Project, through the constant IQ testing.
Globalization has
What constant IQ testing? You mean by the libertarians like you? Like, you aren't constantly taking IQ tests so you can, like, I have an IQ. This test said that my IQ is over 153. So, I understand shapes and patterns questions better than you.
economically destroyed the world. You've got at least 40 to 50,000 people who die every day worldwide from starvation, malnutrition, and diseases which can...
Please, sir, don't use the fact that people starve to death to say that we shouldn't pass these laws because older people have it worse. Please don't do that. I know you're a libertarian. I know you hate Trump. That's why you're not on Alex Jones anymore. So props for the small amount of props you can get for that. For calling libertarianism fascism in its larval stage, basically. Which I would say that's kind of dead on. But please don't do this.
can be cured for pennies, such as diarrhea. And if you add...
Okay. I mean, that's the one weird thing about I forgot his name. He has a name that sounds exactly like how he looks. What is his name? But I mean, he's probably the last person on the Alex Jones show that expressed any sort of lefty sounding ideas. It was actually kind of refreshing, but clearly that didn't last long on the Alex Jones show.
Ask one of these Malthusian oligarchs, don't you think that something should be done to raise the standard of living in Africa or South Asia? They'll say, no, we can't do that. That would wound the planet. That would oppress Mother Earth. So that's oligarchy.
Okay, see, like he's like this close to being based, and then it goes BAM! Off in a libertarian left field.
Class consciousness in this sense is absolutely essential. If you think that bankers are the same as you, you're wrong. F. Scott Fitzgerald once told Hemingway, you know, the rich are different from us. And Hemingway said, yeah, they have more money. And F. Scott Fitzgerald replied, no, it's something much deeper. It's a whole different world. To be an oligarch, to be a Rockefeller or something of this sort, means that you're in a completely different world with values which are the...
It's the demon baby eater herself, the Queen of England! Time traveler!
reverse of human values. Now, if you allow the oligarchs to continue to dominate, the destruction of world civilization is a matter of a few decades at the very, very most. So, choose.
To force their agenda through, the elites are employing one of their favorite tools, artificial crisis creation, also known as the Hegelian dialectic of
Northwood shit again. It's like, he relies too much on Northwoods. It's like, hey, this crazy general wanted to do this shit. Yeah, okay.
problem reaction solution.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
I mean, Rom is a total ghoul that would say this shit like that, so... I mean, I can't disagree if you're talking about Rahm Emanuel.
Earth's ruling elite are first and foremost monopoly men. The founder of the Rockefeller clan summed it up simply.
You must be the Monopoly guy!
When he said, competition
I think I've already seen this part, I don't know.
is a sin.
Rockefeller himself said,
Yeah, I've seen this part.
competition
Why am
was a
I
sin.
rewatching the same shit?
and people
an exemption
There we go. This piece of
from
shit.
the processes of history. So the economic crisis began at the very beginning, and as a matter of fact, when the founders...
Let's go there again. 24, 43. The economic crisis began in the very beginning.
given the power, or a group of banks in conjunction with the government was given the power to expand the money supply at will, those economic systems...
This man got hundreds of people killed, by the way. He doesn't believe in AIDS. He's an alt-righter now. So we can just say this man is a very punchable face. I hate him so goddamn much. And he was like the head of the John Birch Society for a while, so... Piece of shit.
always wound up in crisis and always collapsed. So there's no reason to believe that the United States was given some kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card, an exemption from the processes of history.
He's got just dead eyes. Look at him. I'm gonna get another beer. I just finished another one. Yeah. I know I'm not gonna finish this tonight. All right, let's go. Peanuts.
So the economic crisis began at the very beginning, and as a matter of fact, when the founders of the Federal Reserve System...
See, in the beginning, it all started. It was before the ending, but before the middle, and at the beginning, it started. And that was the beginning.
Met on Jekyll Island back
Everything
in
that started
1910,
to happen
and were drafting the Federal Reserve Act. One of the things they discussed was how to pass on the inevitable losses to the taxpayers. They knew that inevitably some...
Okay, maybe that part was true, but he's going to say it was only passed by 3 people in the middle of the night, which is not how bills work.
Something like this would happen, and they knew that there had to be some way to get out of it without destroying the banks, of course, because they were the banks.
Basic knowledge.
And they said, aha, we'll go into partnership with the government, we'll take our cartel agreement and pass it into law, call it the Federal Reserve Act, and we'll make the taxpayer come online and be responsible to bail us out if and when the failure finally comes.
Who's going to soak up the derivatives? Who's going to soak up the debt? Who's going to be
Ron Paul's got the glasses.
And right now,
he's got the glasses. By the way, I got to push him up for this guy. You know, has somebody made a song about over the Ron Paul stroke? Ron Paul stroke song. I might get banned if I play this, honestly. But just imagine if I did.
now it looks like Wall Street's getting bailed out, and the little guy and the middle Main Street America are all going to pay the penalty.
Can the economy be turning around here? Are happy days here again? And can we actually have growth without jobs? Is this an oxymoron, jobless recovery?
We're going into the greatest depression. There will be no job growth. Unemployment will continue to escalate. Along with it, so too will crime, poverty, kidnappings, boss snappings, and the more things...
Boss snappings? I wish that would happen more often. It's like, hey, why are we all going home early? Oh, boss got kidnapped again. Yeah, the boss snappings have been going up. Like, I wish boss snappings were a thing. Like, we would have so much more political leverage if that was an actual consequence for a lot of bosses. Yeah, Amazon shut down because another person kidnapped Jeff Bezos again.
Things spin out of control.
Okay, I will not say it.
The heart of the hammer is going to come down by the federal government to keep everyone in control.
Power is much, much more important to them than money is. Money is only a way to the means. Power is the end result.
The elite's main
but money is power.
Goal is to destroy national sovereignty and individual independence. To consolidate their grip on power, the banksters create
It's a little ironic, like you freaking about like losing national sovereignty when you live in the United States. It's like, guys, you want to see the main cause about other countries losing their sovereignty? It's the United States. It's almost like they have outsized influence in the UN.
Artificial debt bubbles that are mathematically impossible to...
It's almost like the United States is the head of the octopus.
...pay back.
I am the octopus.
These are those sinister, toxic assets.
Oh, yeah, I remember his name. Webster Tarpley. He looks like somebody that would be named Webster Tarpley.
The complex financial instruments that they talk about but never really name. They're paper based on paper. They're credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations, mortgage-backed securities, asset-backed securities, structured investment vehicles, auction rate securities, and so on down
All these financial terms that I know.
the line. It's an immense mass of cancerous, fictitious, speculative paper, bloated in value, impossible to bail out. Triage the derivatives on their book.
Impossible to bail out. It's literally based on nothing, so you can print as much as you want to bail out whoever the fuck you want. Except your U.S. government likes to bail out the rich people rather than the poor people. As we can say with the whole $2,000 debacle.
Books. There's no way to bail out a $1.5 quadrillion black hole of derivatives, but nevertheless they tried.
The Wall Street cronies are crooks. If you leave the vault to the bank open, these people are going to help themselves. The job of the government is to make sure there's somebody there to make sure the vault is closed, King. And very few people have the combination.
I'm William K. Black, Associate Professor of Economics and Law at the University.
Let's look him up. William K. Black. American lawyer. He developed a concept of control fraud in which a business or national executive uses the entity he or she controls as a weapon to commit fraud. Huh. Okay, I thought I just said Glenn. Okay, never mind. No, the Real News Network. That's the one. That's one of those news networks where it's everybody, all the conservatives are jumping onto. So I would say this guy is probably full of shit. I mean, he's probably a guy that's full of shit that has probably done like a couple good things, but. Okay, he's What is the Real News Network? Oh, never mind. It wasn't. I think like the True News or something is like the conservative one, but this one seems like the early 2000s lib conspiracy brain news. Which, I mean, while being a little bit more close to reality than like QAnon shit, is still kind of iffy.
University of Missouri at Kansas City. I was a senior regulator in a number of different positions during the heart of the savings and loan crisis. On a staff level, I led the re-regulation of the savings and loan industry. The purpose of regulation and effective criminal prosecution is to make sure that cheaters...
Leon E. Bloch. The Bloch knows. The Bloch knows. The Bloch knows.
The Bloch knows. What exactly does the Bloch know?
His gaze pierces cloud, shadow, earth, and
prosper, that honest manufacturers win in competition. The primary driver of the current crisis is accounting control fraud. These are frauds led by the CEOs of the major lending institutions and major banks and institutional buyers of toxic waste product. How did it start? It started with mortgage.
During the economic collapse, Alex Jones had some actually like pretty decent people on. Like some of these people know what they're talking about. but the vast majority of them are like weird grifters. Like this guy, I don't think he means any harm. I think he's a little bit weird, but I think he gets the whole financial shit that he's talking about, obviously.
Mortgages, particularly non-prime mortgages. In September of 2004, the FBI warned that there was an epidemic of mortgage fraud, their words, and that this epidemic of mortgage fraud would cause an economic crisis at least as large as the savings and loan debacle if it wasn't stopped. The FBI found that 80% of the mortgage fraud was being induced by the lenders, not by the borrowers. You know, much of the rage has been against the borrowers. But if you want rage, it should be at the CEOs who became fabulously wealthy by following a strategy based on fraud.
The Wall Street people and their friends here at the Federal Reserve and at the U.S. Treasury and down the Washington Mall here at the U.S. Capitol. That's where the damage was done, and if people want to vent their anger, they need to vent it against these people.
Between the Bush-Paulson administration and the Obama, Summers, Geithner, Volcker administration, there's really a total continuity of economic and financial policy.
Sometimes Webster is based, but most of the time he's a crank.
Geithner was on board at the Fed, the New York Fed, dealing with all these institutions. He didn't get it. And then we had this fellow who came up afterwards, Mr. Friedman. He was on the Goldman Sachs board, and he didn't last too long as the Fed chairman. Why? Because he had a conflict of interest. Is it possible that there's so much conflict of interest here that all you folks don't even realize that you're helping people that you're associated with, and you should be recusing yourself for America's ethics?
I behaved with the...
I remember this video, like, it's just Henry Paulson. It's like,
You don't think you should have recused yourself when you asked Lehman to go in bankruptcy, you didn't put Bear Stearns in bankruptcy, and then you folded Merrill Lynch into, I mean, isn't there some point where you got to say, hey, I got a conflict of interest here? You don't feel any kind of scintilla of ethics on this thing at all?
Totally. I operated very consistently within the ethic guidelines I had as Secretary of the Treasury, and
this whole like air interrogation of what's his name? His name was just Henry Paulson. His name was Henry Paulson. Like he was stuttering through the entire goddamn thing. It's like, I may have done something that was bad, but I'm not gonna. I don't recall.
When it became clear that we had some very significant issues.
Hank, you're not fooling anyone with your Casio sport watch. You know, you just bought that to just replace his Rolex. Like, come on, Henry.
With Goldman Sachs and with
why didn't you recuse yourself
with Morgan Stanley? What I did then, it would have been very wrong for me to recuse myself. What I did was I went and got a waiver from the ethics agreement, because when we had concerns.
Who was in charge of the ethics agreement?
What?
Who's in charge of the ethics agreement that you got a waiver?
We have a office of ethics at Treasury, and we have a White House ethics office.
So you got it from the legal counsel from the White House?
We got it from the government ethics office.
So we had Snow, we had Paulson, now we have Geithner. All these people cut from the same bowl of cloth. These are not independent Treasury secretaries.
They're the crazy shit.
Part of the problem, not part of any solution. And it would have been nice to see President Obama effect some change in Treasury, but of course, he went and got a Wall Street insider as his Treasury secretary.
Everything that's speculative, parasitical, cancerous, bloated from all these administrations, going back to Carter and even beyond, comes together in the Obama administration with Volcker, with Summers, who's part of the economic crime.
Again, LaBase Tarpley. I hate his guts because he's an asshole, but when he's talking about the economic crash, like, you know, go ahead, Mr. Webster.
Under Clinton, the guy who brought you derivatives and the abolition of the Glass-Steagall firewall.
You could not have gotten a more perfect setup for a takeover from a previous government, the Bush regime, than the Obama regime.
Well, what do I put my middle finger down for
now,
Obama
there are some
and Bush for? Come on.
authors out there already saying that it's the same bunch, and it's true. It's the same bankers who put the same boys forward. Obama, far from helping the public and giving them something new or giving them more power and say over their own affairs, has actually sided immediately with the bankers who once again have robbed the public blind, and now they must get bailed out by your tax money.
Obama does it all with left cover. He makes you think that he's somehow different from Bush.
Okay, again, base Tarpley. This is why he's not on Alex Jones anymore.
That this is somehow benevolent, that he cares about the poor. And in reality, this is the cruelest hoax and the most bogus sham. Obama is 1,000% devoted to Wall Street interests. When Wall Street says jump, Obama jumps. And again,
tell me the
it's
lie.
about $30 to $40 for.
Except I hate it when some people in Alex Jones documentaries are right. So anybody in the audience, do not take Whip's or Tarpley's word for it. Just look up what he's referencing and just get it from somebody better, please. Just gotta say that disclaimer. Don't just take his word for it.
For the bankers, for every dollar that ever reaches an unemployed person or somebody who's on food stamps or some infrastructure building for.
Goddamn, even Webster cares about people on food stamps. Like, what is this? What is this?
Highways.
Of course, they show the fucking highway from Endgame, the Trans-Texas corridor. We don't need no more trans highways. They're turning our cars into women. They're all turning into Priuses.
The hope with the Obama administration was that it would move us beyond this. But unfortunately, what we're seeing more and more is that Obama has brought in many of the economy.
I realized I said the Trans-Texas corridor was turning all the cars into women. I should reword that joke of them saying all the trucks turn into Priuses, and all the Priuses turn into trucks. It goes both ways. Trans men exist. I don't want to exclude anyone in my dumb jokes.
Who bought into the system in the past. Larry Summers is a very good example, and so many of his economists, many of the people there, you can really almost at this point relate Obama to Hoover, who did something similar in his presidency, as opposed to Franklin Roosevelt, for example, who brought in a very fresh team.
Praising FDR
So
in an
the
Alex
concern
Jones
here
documentary.
now is that Obama's falling into this trap of bringing in the same people who put us in the position that we're in today, and other people who buy into the same theories that brought us here, this mutant form of capitalism.
Presumably what most politicians want to come in.
This mutant form of capitalism called capitalism taken to its logical conclusion? I mean, you let capitalism go long enough and you're going to end up with shit like this. That's the whole problem with having a business owned by one individual person. They can be like, I don't like these regulations, so I think we should use funds from this business to fund getting rid of these regulations. And then it's like, yay, I'm not regulated anymore. Yay, capitalism.
And say, hey,
that is my dumb guy political analysis for the day. Not that it's not what I'm doing
problems
right now.
of the past, they're due to the old guy. And I'm cleaning house, and I'm going to bring in a new team, and don't blame us for the things we've inherited.
I mean, this guy knows what he's
Can't say,
talking
you know,
about.
those policies of the past that came before were insane, because you got the guy that was one of the key architects of those policies.
That's what's happening right now with Biden. Just keep an eye on him as watch what he backs off of getting rid of from what Trump did. Just saying. I will bet $1,000 that he will not close the ICE detention camps. Not a chance. President My Boss created those. He would not dare.
People need to stop.
I agree.
Having allegiance to their political party. They need to have allegiance to the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and what has made our republic so special. The basic human rights and dignity that every citizen...
Yeah, like this is supposed to be an Alex Jones documentary, not a bunch of like your weird libertarian friends talking about the financial crisis and making themselves sound smart because it's like the one thing they can be correct about. I want to see you yelling at people and shit. Come on, man. That's not why I do these streams. I want to see more of you being an asshole. Which, come on, man.
This country inherently has. Not because it's some right given to us by government, but because our Bill of Rights, our Constitution enshrines that these are inalienable rights given to us by God, that we inherently have as sentient, free, conscious beings. But instead the public cheers on the Republicans as they win, or cheers on the Democrats.
Yes, like you did in 2016, Jones. You acting like wow, the two-party system is a lie. Oh wait, there's a guy that's a fascist running now. I better back him wholeheartedly, and then go from hating the government no matter what it does to like supporting the government whatever it does. Unless there's a justification to say Democrats did that.
Democrats as they defeat the Republicans. It's an endless, staged, gladiatorial event, special interest own both parties, and they project this false left-right paradigm up as like a movie screen. And behind that, behind the throne, the establishment is able to control our society and engineer it into this high-tech police state.
If you try to let the finance oligarchs who created the crisis turn around and say they're the doctors who are going to get you out of the crisis, they will dig you deeper and deeper into the bottomless abyss of world economic depression, financial collapse, and disintegration.
It's just a slog.
The Democrats have really done more to destabilize the American economy and to help the big banks on Wall Street.
And it's one of the final Alex Jones documentaries that came out. So I have a feeling I just have to go through it. It's painful. I just want to quit right now. I'm only 36 minutes in. I'm going to at least get an hour in by the end of this. I'm going to sacrifice so much. I hate it.
Than the Republicans have done. I would imagine that the Republicans know a little bit more about finance and markets enough that...
No, they don't. They just want money.
When someone like Goldman Sachs asks the Congress to change laws as they did in the 90s to do away with position limits on the futures contracts, the Republicans would have said, no way, that's completely inconsistent with any notion of a fair market. But
when have the Republicans ever cared about the debt when they were in power? Max, you so-called economist, shut up and sell your fake Bitcoin.
The Democrats, I have a feeling, are just not...
I should say fake Dogecoin.
Financially literate enough to say no. And I think that Goldman has very shrewdly positioned themselves with the Democrats because the Democrats...
Let's look. Goldman Sachs Republican donations. Open secrets. Oh, the top recipients. National Republican Senatorial Committee, $25,000. National Republican Congressional Committee, $25,000. Democratic Senatorial Campaigns Committee, $15,000. Let's just look at these numbers. Who does Goldman Sachs favor, I think? Both of the parties, but I think they favor one a little bit more. They favor another party $10,000 more than another one. Give $10,000 to Nancy Pelosi. Doug Jones, the guy who barely beat a pedophile. Yeah, I mean, just from this, they give about as much to Republicans as they do Democrats. Okay, let's see if there's a average contributions to members of Congress. So, 1990, when Clinton was in power, they gave a bunch of money to the Democrats. And then the 2000 election happened right here, and they started giving money to Republicans. Then 2004 happened, and they thought Bush wouldn't get reelected. Or they didn't want to be associated with Bush, so they gave a bunch to the Dems. And then 2008, then it was popular to hate Obama, and then they gave money to the Republicans and funded, like, the Tea Party. Like, after, like, 2008, they funded both parties, but they funded the Democrats just slightly less than them. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, in 2008, they gave a shit ton of money to the Democrats. And then by the time the collapse was over, they stopped giving them money.
That's typically, like many NGOs that I've run into, they seem to have a complete inability to comprehend these issues of markets and finance and how it relates to social justice. So under the Democrats, we also saw the repeal of Glass-Steagall.
Glass-Steagall said there's an inherent conflict of interest between the commercial banking side, which is the lending side, and the investment banking side, which is taking an ownership position. And we have to end this conflict.
They should have just given this guy the documentary. He's the only one that knows what the fuck he's talking about right now.
Conflict of interest by separating these two entities. You can have investment banks and you can have commercial banks, but they have to be separate.
Do you think that the repeal of Glass-Steagall was a tragic mistake?
Bernie!
No, I don't think so.
You could be a commercial bank like Chase Manhattan, or you could be an investment house like J.P. Morgan, or a bank like Bank of America, or an investment house like Merrill Lynch. But you couldn't be both. And as the 90s went on, the screaming
get you a bank that can
hyenas of Wall Street were demanding that this prohibition, this regulation, be abolished.
This was an illegal and inappropriate form of casino. The derivatives were being used, and they were being unregulated, and people were getting 30 to 1, 40 to 1, 50 to 1, and sometimes 100 to 1 profits on.
I mean, you could. I swear most of these guys read books by people that actually knew what they were talking about. Like the guy that I said knew what he was talking about. They all just read his book and they're just repeating his shit. Because these guys are nuts.
On the way up. And remember,
like this guy talks about the mark of the beast and shit.
Derivatives are a zero-sum game. So there's nothing there. It's not like a piece of stock in General Electric or Ford or something like that where there's supposed to be some value. Derivatives have no value. But
this is just educating a bunch of dum-dums that didn't know anything about the financial crisis was, and just giving a bunch of like true information about like why it happened and like all of the fucking bullshit that went on and how many bank people like helped make it go the way it does. And then these fucking grifters are like, so anyway, the mark of the beast, yeah, the vaccines and the 5G will give you the mark of the beast, so you should just pay me money to stop that.
the very people, Summers and Geithner and all the people at Goldman Sachs and
It's Geithner, not Geithner, idiot. I can tell you don't know anything about what you're talking about. You're just repeating something you read out of a book. from somebody that actually knew what they were talking
P. Morgan, who created these things, made not millions or billions.
That's why you're saying Geithner, because you read it and you didn't know how it was actually said.
But trillions on the way up. And now that these things are crashing, the very same folks are now put in charge of regulating these things and in charge of the bailout, and they are giving money to the very rascals that created this problem, took the profits. The problem cannot be fixed. And this is on Obama's watch right now.
You have so many different schemes and mechanisms at play. It's sort of like after there's a blackout, you know, people in some parts of the country have been known to loot the local stores. You know, they go in, they grab the televisions, and they grab the stereos. And basically that's what the Wall Street gang has done. They've just engaged in this massive looting of money from their own companies and now from the U.S. Treasury.
There was a lady called Brooksley Bourne. She was the head of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission under Clinton. And she said, look, we have these derivatives. Why don't we at least make them reportable so we know how many there are and where they are? And she writes in a biographical account, she said, I picked up the phone and Larry Summers was screaming at me that I was interfering with the wonderful inventiveness and ingenuity of Wall Street and their ability to come up with new financial products, such as these derivatives.
Brooksley Bourne was the chair of the Commodities Future Trading Commission, CFTC, which regulates many financial derivatives. And she said there's a grave danger out there in the form of these credit default swaps. And credit default swaps are an exotic financial derivative, or moderately exotic financial derivative, were sold on a bright, shining lie that they were supposed to make markets more efficient. In fact, they allow utterly insane gambles, and they're really great devices for accounting fraud as well. She actually says, I'm thinking of adopting this regulation. The Clinton administration goes berserk.
Honestly, I cannot finish this goddamn bullshit. What the fuck? How can you make something this painfully boring? My God. You know what? I'm just gonna break this up piece by piece. Oh, I'll just skip it. I'll just skip this shit. This is so bad. Like, I'm stuck in a time warp on this shit. I'm done. I tap out. I'm fucking done. I'm done. Bye-bye. End it. End this goddamn bullshit. Free